Now, before we start talking about big force, it's important that we understand what exactly it is. In simplest terms, big force is a collision between two physical bodies. There's energy being released there. So in the game of volleyball, when somebody spikes, a hand makes contact with the volleyball and spikes it, there's a big force there. Okay, there's a collision there. In baseball, when somebody hits a home run and the bat makes contact with the ball, there's a big force there. There's another collision. Here at Velocity Sports Performance San Antonio, we're very concerned with how the foot makes contact in a big force fashion against the ground mainly. Now, how does it relate to the disciplines of speed? Well, let's start with acceleration. With acceleration, we're interested in going forward, generally speaking, and we want to make contact with our foot into the ground, very hard and very fast in an effort to drive our body forward. That's called first step quickness. Scott, would you please demonstrate a basic acceleration technique? Now, we saw a big force happen there. The foot struck the ground, very forceful in an effort to drive Coach Kroft's body forward. In a sport like football, acceleration is warranted. The running back takes the handoff, and he jab steps and tries to drive through an opening in the line. Now, the more force he can apply to the ground, the sooner he's going to hit that gap. In volleyball, when a volleyball player drives up against the ground in an effort to rise up above the net and get a block shot, there's a big force. Now, the harder that person drives up against the ground, the higher they're going to get, the quicker they're going to get there, and hopefully get the block. Now, multi-directional movement is a little bit different. In multi-directional movement, we need to see a deceleration, a slight stop if any, and a re-acceleration in another direction. And Coach Kroft is going to demonstrate a multi-directional movement as we teach it here. Now, once again, we saw a big force present. As he made himself decelerate, there was a big force against the ground in an effort to briefly stop his body and redirect his energy in the opposite direction. He used both feet to do so. Now, the faster and the harder he applies that force, the sooner he's going to make his transition and get out and get the other direction where he wants to go. Now, I think of multi-directional movements in terms of, say, basketball, for instance. A basketball player takes a crossover dribble, they load one side, and then they drive against the ground to take their body back in the other direction. Now, the harder and the faster they strike the ground, the sooner they're going to make that transition and hopefully get around their opponent. In baseball, sometimes you get a player caught in a pickle between two bases, and they have to stop their momentum going against one base, redirect and drive their body against the grain to get back to the base where they were previously safe. Now, once again, the bigger the force output against the ground in that foot, hopefully the better and the sooner they're going to get back and maybe get safe. Now, max velocity is a little bit different, and we're going to see an example of max velocity, and then I'm going to address how big force applies. All right. Now, max velocity. Now, there's two things we need to understand about max velocity. It's comprised of two components. One is foot contacts. The more foot contacts you can make on the ground between the distance you're traveling, the sooner you're going to get there. Now, the one we're really interested in is the second. The more forceful each of those ground contacts can be, as you rotate around, the leg swings around and pulls the body forward, the more force you can apply into the ground, the farther your body is going to travel between those two foot contacts. And hopefully the faster you're going to get from point A to point B. Football, again, comes to mind. Sometimes a wide receiver is asked to streak down the field and maybe get under a Hail Mary. Now, the maintaining of your max velocity speed is what's important here. We all know you can get up to max speed, but can you maintain it? The more force you apply against the ground, the more likely you are to maintain your max velocity. Now, in track, running the 100-yard dash, again, the maintenance of your top end speed is extremely important. And again, once the foot gets going and the stride cycle happens, the more force you can apply against the ground during each stride, the more likely you are to maintain that top end speed and actually win the race. Anytime a player breaks away in a sport like soccer or basketball or football, when somebody's trying to pursue that player, it's important that you exhibit good force output and good leg cycle in an effort to perhaps catch or outrun your opponent. Now, big force is an ability, and it can be taught, just like any other skill, by people who know how to teach it, like your coaching staff at Velocity Sports Performance San Antonio.